Yes, hello everyone. Welcome back to WD18, the Watford fan channel. Welcome to a transfer video. This time we're going to be talking about the latest signing, latest addition to Watford's Premier League squad. That's Danny Rose, who was joined on a 2-year contract with an option of a further year on a free agent. He is a free after leaving Tottenham Hotspur at the end of last season. He ran down his contract and he's made the move, not too far, just to London Colney, so won't have to relocate from Tottenham Hotspur. But he's joined Watford on a 2-year deal with an option of a further year, and we're going to be discussing it today. A really interesting signing, this one, because I think we all knew that Watford needed a left-back. It's been rumoured that Ashley Young was coming back, but that deal looks to have not progressed, and he seems to be off to Aston Villa or potentially Burnley. But Danny Rose came out of nowhere. Of course, he did play for Watford in 2009. So it's a little bit of a return, a little bit of nostalgia, but he does know a number of members of the Watford squad, and I'm sure he'll fit in seamlessly. Today, we're going to be discussing the deal alongside Mr. Sam Yuko. Sam, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, all good. I'm really happy with the Danny Rose signing, actually, and with the fixtures coming out as well, which we'll talk about in another video. It's all starting to seem more real now that we're back in the Premier League. So really exciting, and what is it? Our second or third signing this window. So
Ready.
yeah, it's very much like, I don't think we're seeing a lot of big names come in, but in terms of what we saw last time we got promoted in, what was it, 15-16, when we signed pretty much a whole new team. I don't think we'll see it to that extent, but it does very much feel like that with the amount of players that seem to be coming in already.
Yeah, what was your initial reaction to it, Sam? Because I think, overall, I think personally, from what I saw on social media, a lot of people are positive about it. I mean, the pedigree that Danny Rose has, 14 years at Tottenham, playing in the Champions League final 2 years ago, playing, I think it's 29 times for England, played at World Cups, major tournaments, and arguably some of Tottenham's best teams in recent years with title challenges, etc. You know, he is at his peak. He probably is better than Watford, but of course he didn't play a lot of football last season. And I think he sees it as an opportunity to get regular first-team football. But are you certainly someone who, maybe if we can get him back to full fitness and get him back to playing his best, I imagine it would be a really good addition for us?
Yeah, definitely. I'm really excited and happy by the signing. I feel like in many ways, I know he is, 29, 30 years old, but I kind of get the same feel that when we sign a young player, in terms of, I feel like this is going to be a completely new start for Danny Rose, completely fresh start, a new opportunity for him, where he's had his difficulties in the last couple of years. We know how good his potential is, but it's about, as you said, whether we can get him up to full fitness, whether, he can cement a place in the starting team. And in terms of that, with the potential that he brings, I very much view him almost as a young player coming in, even though we will only probably get maybe, as you said, 2 or 3 years out of him. So really exciting signing for Watford, a Premier League standard signing if we can get him up to fitness. And I think it's a stamp of authority for where we want to be next season.
I guess that bringing in a left back was a priority as well, because I think we said it a number of times in the videos, even at the back end of last season when we got promoted, which was, we have to sign a left back in this window. Yeah. Done it early, which is it's a bold statement from Watford that they spotted an area and it needed addressing. And I think we've all complained, I guess, over recent years. I think particularly at centre back, we were like, well, this area needs to be addressed, and it hasn't been addressed. But Watford have gone, you know what, left back on a free, Danny Rose, he fills that void. But I think the big question for me, Sam, to you is, does he go straight into the lineup? Because this is the discussion with Adam Messina still at the football club. Does he automatically become first choice, or a case of, Danny, you need to get to full fitness and almost earn that spot before you can get into the starting lineup?
Obviously, I think it's a really difficult question. Obviously, I think he has to earn his place in the team because, previous problems we've had are players earning their place in the team based on merit of their previous kind of stature at other football clubs or their price tag. And players shouldn't be playing unless they earn their place. And the minimum that we want as Watford fans is players giving 110%. And I think that's something that you can't really say Adam Messina doesn't give, because while he's got, a couple of mistakes in him, or a couple of lapses in concentration, I don't think any Watford fan can argue that he's not trying or not giving 110%. I would say quality-wise, Danny Rose does start over him. But again, maybe the start of the season will be too soon for him. I think, Jacob, you told me off air that he might be having a kind of a pre-season to the pre-season. According to The Athletic.
Adam Leventhal mentioned in the recent article on Danny Rose, where he spoke to a number of people close to the player, that he's expected to have a kind of pre-season, because of course he hasn't played a lot of football. It's literally been under 23 football for Danny Rose at Spurs. He's frozen out the team with Jose. And actually, I wanted to touch on that with the Amazon documentary, Sam, that has kind of followed Danny Rose over the last season or so since the All or Nothing Amazon documentary came out about Spurs. Of course, he was a favourite under Maurizio Pochettino. The last appearance I think he made under Mourinho was at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium against Liverpool, where they lost. He then came in the next day in the office, basically saying some players are starting where they shouldn't be and he should be getting more of an opportunity. What did you make of that and how he was portrayed on the Amazon documentary? I know you watched it.
I feel sorry for him in many ways. I feel like, first of all, these are pretty normal conversations that happen in football for a start, from what I can gather. And simply because it's an Amazon documentary and into a massive club, you kind of feel like it's this massive one-off thing. But I feel like this is much more common than people think it is. So in the grand scheme of footballing things, I don't think it's that much of a big deal. I also feel like, the nature of a documentary, I feel like it probably would have been over dramatized to where it actually was. And third of all, from what I don't know Danny Rose personally, but him and Jose Mourinho's personalities, I can imagine, would have clashed quite a bit. So it probably wasn't the best fit for either of them to be with each other. So I do feel really sorry with his treatment, considering what servant he was to Tottenham and, the service that he gave them, particularly in the run up to the Champions League final. But it's a good opportunity for him to have a fresh start, prove those, because we're going to have so many people talking about that Amazon documentary. We'll hear it on commentary next year. People, when they hear about Danny Rose, people make these jokes about, because he went out to Daniel Levy and said, "Oh, have you heard anything from Milan yet?" And he's ended up at Watford. So, from the San Siro to Vicarage Road, I feel like it's a really good opportunity for him to put himself back on the map. And, it's probably too late in his career to secure another big move, but prove to people why he should have been perhaps more respected under Jose Mourinho.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely bang on there about kind of putting himself back on the map. I think it was the interview with Watford, actually, where he did mention that was the reason he came to Watford. And he did actually mention as well about potentially going abroad. And that seemed to be, there was offers on the table. But actually, it was Watford who had shown an interest before, Sam. And I remember that deadline day, wasn't it? I think it was the season we got relegated that summer, the 2019-20 season, that summer anyway, just off the back of the FA Cup. We were looking for a left-back. I think it was around £40 million that was rumoured at the time. It's clear that Watford have had a long-standing interest in him. For whatever reason, that didn't go through. And I remember him saying actually about how I think the rumours were that he was at the training ground and it fell through.
He was in bed. Yeah, he was asleep. Class.
He had found himself at the training ground via Sky Sports News. But yeah, I mean, the one thing I wanted to mention is in terms of the character of him as well, because, as you mentioned about the Amazon documentary, this is a player who has received some negative press as a result of that. And as you said, it paints him in a certain light. But from what I've read up about him in terms of what he does off the pitch, for example, with the local hospital, I think he donated like 500 pizzas or something during the pandemic. He's a real good player for the youngsters as well, bringing them through. How important is that, do you think, particularly because, we mentioned with Troy, you can tell how much of a leader he is, not, as we know, not only on the pitch, but off the pitch as well. Another player like that is invaluable, really, for Watford.
Yeah, I completely agree. I felt like it's not that we lost something when, I'll go back to when Jose Holebas kind of lost his starting place at left back last season. And it's not that we kind of lost something in defence, but I did feel like there wasn't as much an authority in there. And I feel like, particularly last season, I thought Kiko took up a more, a more vocal role at the back, Sierralta, Troost-Ekong. And I feel like Danny Rose would really complement them with that in terms of his leadership at the back. And that's so important, particularly a lot of games next year. If we're going to be realistic, it's not going to be as attacking as we saw in the Championship. We will be sitting back much more. And I feel like that leadership will be really important. And, particularly with, there's still rumours that we're linked with quite a few youngsters, particularly from Scotland and other English clubs. And I feel like he would be a really useful player to have in there. He's got international experience, Champions League experience. And just going back to what I said about Jose Mourinho and his personality clashing, I think we saw the best of Danny Rose under Maurizio Pochettino. And in many ways, I've said it before, I see a lot of parallels between Xisco and Pochettino in terms of their personality. So hopefully Xisco can, I think Danny Rose is the sort of player you want to put your arm around, and hopefully Xisco can do that and get Danny Rose on side and playing his best football.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think Xisco's that kind of man manager, as Troy's mentioned as well, about how I think it was Christmas time last season where he gave them the night off at Christmas. They didn't have to stay at the hotel.
Yeah.
It's just things like that players really respond to, and I think Danny Rose for sure. Similar, I can really see that now. Now you've said it, it's clicked with me, because I was like, Xisco is similar to Pochettino in terms of the man management styles, very much sort of
exactly
around the shoulder. There'll be times where he has to go into players, of course, in the dressing room, whatever. But I do get the impression he's definitely a really good man manager, and I think another point is the fact that Xisco has just come out of football. He understands the modern football players' needs, and I think that's a really big thing as well.
Exactly. And just following up on that as well, I mean, in terms of the modern footballers' needs, is that Danny Rose has been one of the most vocal players in terms of about mental health in football and everything. And I feel like it's a really good message to people in terms of he seemed to be completely written off in English football by Tottenham, and there were no takers seemingly after an uninspiring loan spell at Newcastle, I think it's fair to say. And it just shows, you know, his will and desire to come back in, and hopefully, you know, he seems excited to play for Watford, and he said he's raring to go. So I feel like it's a good message to people generally in terms of what he can bring, not just to Watford, but football in general.
Yeah, well said, mate. I was going to touch on that Newcastle loan spell, actually. How much do we read into that? I think it was 13 times he played for Newcastle on loan. Of course, there was offers, I think, from Bournemouth as well. He went back up north. Of course, he's from Doncaster, so it was closer to home. But again, he hadn't played a lot of football before then. So as Watford fans, do we read a lot into that, or is it a case of kind of just moving on and a kind of a completely fresh start for him?
Yeah, I think we need to look at it as a complete fresh start, particularly because, you know, first of all, we're going back a year from then. It's a year, things have changed a lot. He joined Newcastle, I mean, in the middle of the pandemic or just before it, and he played against us, and I'd say he was okay when we won 2-1. I wouldn't say he was incredible, but I don't think we can look too much into that Newcastle spell. I think, yeah, as I said, I don't think we should look back on Danny Rose's career too much, except for the potential that he has, because it's an opportunity for him to have a fresh start and it's experience, and it's a good move for both parties, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on the squad, Sam, it's another player, experienced player, 30 years of age coming into the squad. And I think Cristiano Gioretta made it pretty clear that Watford are trying to find that balance between some of the older heads and some young players. And we've been linked with a number of young players. Do you think we're starting to see a real nice balance in this Watford squad in terms of the youth and the experience? Because Danny Rose is obviously an incredibly experienced player. And I think, again, that's only going to help the squad, right?
I feel like that's the best word in there, is balance. I feel like we have kind of players in all three categories in terms of your young players, your João Pedros, your Sars, your players in the middle who are starting to get more experience and becoming important players, such as, you know, Will Hughes is a primary example of that. And you also have players not coming towards the end of their careers, but are more experienced, such as Troost-Ekong, Troy Deeney, Danny Rose, who we've just signed. And that balance is really good, and it's a clear philosophy of what we want now in terms of a squad, having a really nice balance across the books that we can improve players and serve to their needs as well as serving to Watford's needs, and hopefully keeping us in the Premier League next season.
Fingers crossed. But yeah, no, absolutely, I completely agree with you, mate. And
we're winning the league. We're winning the league, not just staying in
it. Enough. Just the last thing on Rose that kind of popped into my head was, he's known Dan Gosling for 11 years, I believe, or a long time anyway. Tom Cleverley knows through Danny Welbeck. He was best mates with Etienne Capoue, I think, at Spurs, so he was a little bit gutted to see him leave. So, again, a player, he also knows Troy as well. So I think he'll slot into this Watford squad seamlessly off the pitch anyway. But yeah, that's our thoughts on Danny Rose. Let us know in the comment section what you make of the deal. Watford have signed Danny Rose on a 2-year deal with an option of a further year on a free transfer. Leave a like if you did enjoy the video, and don't forget to subscribe to WD18 for more Watford fan content ahead of the 2021-2022 Premier League season. See you again.